Hello viewers, this is Mitul here. In this module 8, the advanced query concepts, what we would be covering is first of all we'll be covering is the store procedure, and within the store procedure what we will see is how to create the store procedure, how to alter it, how to drop it, how to execute, and what are the kind of permissions that we can grant to the store procedure, what are the dependencies, like what all dependent objects are there within that, right? And then the parameters, how many parameters you could pass to the store procedure, whether it could be input or an output parameters. Then the third type is like the returning a data from a store procedure. How can we return the data from a store procedure? Then the fourth kind is like the recompiling. How can we recompile the store procedure? Okay, and then the renaming of the store procedure that we will see. Then we will see the exception handling. How can we manage the exceptions occurring from the store procedure? So okay, now let us understand about the module number 8.1.3, wherein which we'll be understanding about returning a value from the store procedure. There are basically four codes that we could use in this case. If there is a valid value that is passed to the procedure, the parameter, if it is the valid parameter passed, and there is no error, in that case you may find this code as 0, wherein in case you did not pass any value, or say you passed an empty string or something of that sort, then in that case the code return would be 1. And if there is an invalid input that you will pass in to the procedure which may not rightly filter the data, in that case we want to return the code as 2. So this is the code that you may return, it will be written. And then the fourth case is like whenever there is like an error, maybe server error, maybe network error, maybe a logical error or some sort of error from procedure. So in that case the store procedure would return the code as 3. Okay, so we'll see one of all four of them together in a single example. So let us just understand one by one. Now we will be using the learning DB for the purpose. Okay, so let's just understand the input parameters. We already understood how to pass in and what are the default values. Here in this case we are passing the empty string as default value and the 0 as a input parameter to the default parameter we want to use. I will explain you that why am I using this parameter. Ideally this is not a required in general case, but for this example purpose to combine all four of this kind of an error I am using this input parameter. Okay, all right, so now let us just move on further that we want to check like whether the user has passed in that parameter or not, meaning to check the first condition if there is no value passed, right? How can we check that? We need to put in that if condition. Like if condition, say like the parameter which is parameter student name, if it is equal to null or that parameter value is equal to empty string, which is what will be the case in our case, because we are by default, if the user won't pass the value, we will be treating it as if like an empty string or assigning the empty string to it. So both of this case will become true, and in that case the store procedure would return the code as 1. Okay, return is the keyword you may use, and in the bracket you will pass the value as 1, 0 or 2 or 3. Okay, all right, now if this condition doesn't become true, meaning like the user passes a valid value, here there was no value passed, but if user passes a valid value, user passes an invalid value, which is not present in your table. So in that case, the value will return the code as 2. How come? This condition is checking like whether the count of students present in the current table is equal to 0. In that case, return the user the code as 2, meaning the user has not passed a valid value. Okay. So in that case, we'll return 2 because both of these conditions are evaluated. Now, if user has passed a valid value, then there won't be any error in that case, because generally there won't be any error as per the logical condition and everything is written perfectly in the procedure. It won't return any error. So if this is a system variable, basically @ error keyword will return the global variable with no error code. If there is error code equal to 0, then it won't enter into this condition. Okay, if it is not equal to 0, only in that case it will enter into this block and return the code as there is some error, means third number code, which is this third. If any error occurred, then this code value is returned. So in that case, this will return the code as 3. Otherwise, if there is no errors, there are no invalid values, and there is a valid value only, in that case it will enter into this else block, which will just go and filter the student name by this input parameter, and that student record would be returned from the store procedure as a result set. Okay, and then we also want to return the user that there was no error, everything was valid, perfectly fine. So we want to return the code as 0 in that case. Okay, so then we will be passing the or returning the code as 0. We don't need to pass or assign this value to a output variable, but if at all the case, then possibly you may use it, not mandatory, like you may always pass it this way. Maybe you could use declare the variable and you can return that variable that way also. You could pass the value, or directly you can use this keyword or say like a code as an output value. Okay, whichever would be your preference. Now let us just create and execute this procedure, and we'll test it thoroughly, each and every cases. Okay, all right, so procedure is created. Now we go here and then say refresh. So procedure is created, and now we will be testing each of those cases. So let us just take all these examples here, so we will understand case by case. Okay, so let's comment that. All right, fine. So first of all, how we want to test it? We do not want to pass a value to check the code as 1, right? So in that case, we will be passing as null, or we could pass as empty string, whichever is fine. But in our case, we'll be passing null. Why? Because we already have assigned the default value. If the user will pass as null, then also it will be treated as an empty string, and it will be treated as like invalid or say like a no value. Okay, so let's just pass the null value in the beginning. The second parameter we won't be passing here because we want to test only for the third case or the fourth case only. So for now we will not pass that value. Okay, so let us just execute this much. Let me help you understand why am I declaring this variable as return value. The type to that is integer. Integer basically is because the return code will be in the form of integer value. So that returning code is what I want to hold it in this return value variable. For that reason, I would write it like this: execute, meaning like this full keyword, or you can write the 4 initial letters of that and then say return value. Here I am using the return value variable well before I have written the store procedure name, because I want to assign the result of the store procedure to this returning variable. So in my case, suppose if the store procedure has returned the result set, that is a separate thing. But if store procedure returns some value in the form of a code, then that code value will be assigned to this returning variable. Okay, so for that reason I have declared this variable, and this variable will be assigned a value to it, and then we will be displaying that value. Okay, so you can understand all three of these. Now this is what I am passing the parameter name as student. So in first we will be passing as null, then we may test these other conditions. Okay, let's just execute first. All right, so here we are finding the return value as 1. Why it is returning as 1? Why? Because we have passed the null value, or you could write like the empty string, whichever could be the case, it will still return the same result. Fine, no issue. Now in our case, we want to test the first condition became true, done, and then we want to test the second condition, which is like an invalid value we want to pass. So let us just pass some value which is not present in our student table. We are going to pass this value as an input. Okay, and then we'll test the condition. Let's just run to see it. Okay, we find the return value as 2. Why? Because this value is not present in our current table result. Fine. If you want to check, I'll show you to right now. See, There is no student called Stuart, right? For that reason, we are returning the value as 2. Okay, so that's an invalid value. So this is also true. Now we want to test the third condition, which is in our case, like I want to return some error. There is no code I have written as such that may throw the error, but I just want to give you the example of how the errors can be handled. So this is how you may handle it. That may not be the case always. Okay, this statement could be the reality. Like in reality, there may be some select statement or maybe some other statements you may be having written to. Then how that statement would throw is like whenever this statement will be executed, if you just run this example itself, right, the select statement itself, it will return you the error. Okay, that's why I'm just giving you a very simple example. So in that case, if the parameter value, in my case, I want to test that particular, I want to throw the error. For that purpose, I am evaluating this case. Otherwise, I want to skip that. So in previous case, you saw that there was no error thrown out. Why? Because we did not pass the value as 1, and by default we pass the value as 0 to it, right? And 0, whenever there is a 0, it won't enter into this block and raise any error. Okay, that was the purpose. Now suppose we want to raise the error to evaluate the fourth code, which is the error one. So in that case, we will disable this enable this condition or pass the parameter, and then we will execute this parameter default value as 1, and having the value even as valid, this is going to be valid value. Still, we want to check that parameter default value will throw some error. Okay, even this is already a present record in our table. As you see, this is already a present student in our table. Still, it may throw the error just because of this parameter value I am passing, because there is deliberately I am raising an error here from the procedure, so that the store procedure would enable this block and return you this code to show you that. Okay, so if this block will be executed, then by default store procedure will raise an error, and that error code will be held into this variable by default. So that error code will become true, and means this value will become this value will be not equal to 0 in that case, and then it will return you this return code as 3. Okay, so let's just see it in action. Execute it here. All right, so we found that expected as per expectation, it says like divide by 0 error, meaning it cannot do so. So, and returning you the return value as 3, right, as expected. So this is also true in our case. So all 3 of these test cases are evaluated. Now we want to evaluate the fourth one, which is the valid value we need to pass, and there won't be any error in that case. So if we do not pass this value, or say we pass the value having 0 to it, both are fine. Since we do not want to pass this value, because we by default declared the variable as input as 0. Okay, for that reason we can omit this parameter at all. Okay, so no need of it. And the parameter name, the parameter value we are passing as an Alex, which is a present student in the table. So that will be return you the result for a particular student with a name called Alex. Okay, so let's just return the value. All right, so it has returned the 0, right, and the record has returned, correct. So all 4 test cases are passed. We are fine in this case. So that's it for this session I wanted to explain about. Thank you.